Hi, this is David Sutkin from Bass Upfront. You're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi, and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. You know, a lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play an instrument. So I created ForBassPlayersOnly.com for adults who want to learn bass because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. ForBassPlayersOnly.com. Let's play bass. My guest this week is David Sutkin, a very interesting guy. David is from Brooklyn, New York. He's a bass player, of course, a great player, and he's been at it for over 40 years now, doing a lot of pretty high-level stuff, playing all over the world. And if you could look over his shoulder there, you could see maybe a fraction of his personal collection of some 230 basses. And he's also got a whole bunch of pedals and cabinets and amps. I mean, he's into it. His band, Apollo's Ghost, no apostrophe in Apollo's, I have to ask him about that, is based in Brooklyn, and it's known as a post-rock, alt-rock power trio. David is the founder of the very popular Facebook group Bass Upfront, which, according to the last article I saw, has around 17,000 active members. But every article I see about it, the number keeps getting higher than the last one. Bass Upfront is described as a drama-free, judgment-free atmosphere, ensuring a sense of unity. I like that. And according to David's personal Facebook page, place of birth, earth, race, human, politics, freedom, religion, love. And under that is hashtag truth. This is the first time he's been on ForBassPlayersOnly.com. Welcome, David. It's great to have you.
Thank you, John. I appreciate the introduction and the ability and the chance and the opportunity to be on For Bass Players Only. I've been a big fan of your channel and your interviews for a very, very long time, longer than you probably care for me to say how long I've been a fan of watching your interviews. Really exceptional quality content, and I'm able to really dive into some players that I always wanted to know about. And For Bass Players Only is a fantastic channel to do that with. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your kind words. And, you know, we only have the best people interviewed on this show. So
just like in Bass Upfront, just like in Bass Upfront. So feeling is mutual.
I almost don't know where to start with you because you have such an interesting background. But let's start from the beginning, the early years. I know you grew up with a musician father who was a huge influence on you. But tell me just in general about your musical upbringing and what attracted you to the bass.
Sure. So that is correct. My father was a jazz saxophone player, and he was a musicophile, not so much an audiophile, somewhat of an audiophile, but the technology back in the day wasn't as high tech as it is now. But he was.
Did you have a hi-fi?
Yes, but old Onkyo stuff and Akai stuff, right? As opposed to today where it's all like UAD. And so regardless, a turntable has been around forever. As a matter of fact, there were four bedrooms in the house. Grew up on Long Island, but been in Brooklyn forever. And my brother and I had to share a bedroom because the other bedroom was my father's music library, right? And it was just wall to wall. Count Basie and Duke Ellington and Charles Mingus, but then you could go to Saint-Saëns and Mozart and Bach and Brahms, and then you could go to Paco de Lucia, or you could go to Tito Puente. It was loaded everywhere with music. And he would spend hours, and then of course, because I was, let's say, 12 years old, I would be called up to sit in the room, listen to this, sit on the bed and listen to this with me. And I have a memory of I have memories of being in the car with him on drives, and we would be listening, and he would start laughing, or a smile would come across his face during a piece of music. And I never understood it. I'm like, what's this crazy old man smiling at? Only did I come to realize so many years later that he heard something in the riff or the solo that made him smile. The soloist was talking to other musicians or music files that were listening, just like I do now when I hear a solo, and I'm like, I can't believe he snuck that lick in. And my kids are like, what? And so I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be just like my father, which is very commonplace for young men to be like their fathers in many cases. And so I recall saying to him, I want to play an instrument, but I'm not sure what. And he said, listen to me. If you always, he comes from the what is the period that I'm looking for? Anyway, he had a tough upbringing. So he said, if you always want to work, which is the first thing he said, be a bass player, but be a competent bass player, have chops, always be on time, and stay humble. But he said, if you always want people to need you, be a competent bass player. And that night, as Kismet would have it, I heard Sickness X1, which is there's an interplay between Geddy Lee and Neil Peart. And it was almost fated for me to be a bass player. When I heard that, the punch of that Rickenbacker come in, I said, I want this. So we went out to a local music store, and he rented me. He wasn't sure I was going to stay with it, because kids are like, I want to do this, I want to do that. And he rented me an old Hondo, Japanese Hondo bass, and a Gorilla 15 amplifier. You remember? Yeah. So I had a Hondo and a Gorilla 15. And to me, that was the equivalent today of like a 62 jazz bass and a big Marshall stack, because it was mine, right? Even though it was rented, it was mine in my room for me to play with. And unlike so many people who start, but then don't really stay with it, I could not keep it out of my hands. I played and I played and I played, and I would sit with him, and I could tell that because my father wasn't as successful as he would have liked to have been, he lived vicariously through my love of playing and being young and being a sponge. So we would sit and talk about theory, because my father was very, very good with math. So he would sit and explain to me whole scales, minor scales, major scales, and we would talk about theory without an instrument in our hand. And I wanted to impress him, so I would go upstairs and learn pieces. I didn't get into the genres that he got into. I was
going to ask you what he thought of your taste in music.
He didn't care for it. I can remember a conversation. It's funny you ask. I can remember a conversation. My brother is quite a few years older than I am. So let's say he was about 17 or 18 years old, and we were sitting around the breakfast table. I must have been 12. And my father was talking to my brother saying, my father had Frank Sinatra on. He says, this will be around forever. You think your music like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd are going to be around forever? And my memory's not great, John. I'm getting up there in years too. And I can remember that conversation like it was yesterday. And yes, of course, Pink Floyd will be around forever and Led Zeppelin will be around forever, just like Frank Sinatra. I'm not so sure Frank Sinatra will be around forever as much as Led Zeppelin, but it doesn't matter. But my genres were, it was almost like from that movie Almost Famous. My brother and my sister went off to college and I had their record collection. I could go to their record collection and there was the diversity of Born to Run, Astral Weeks by Van Morrison, Gil Scott Heron, Wish You Were Here. Every single, when I discovered, I'm getting goosebumps. When I discovered the White Album, it blew my mind. And those albums were precious. This is pre-internet. And it was just like the scene out of that movie. I couldn't get enough of listening to all this great band, listening to the band, right? And my ear would always go to Rick Danko or Roger Waters or Paul McCartney's lines. It was meant to be. Still to this day, my ear always goes to, as I'm sure with you, my ear always goes to the bass line. So that was my early upbringing. And then, of course, in junior high school, I played double bass in orchestra, or I played tuba in the band to be in the lower register. But I enjoyed very much playing in orchestra. That was probably when my reading chops were the best.
Just going back a little bit, when you said you played and played and played, what did you play? How did you actually learn to play bass? I understand the theory you talked to your dad about, but what about actually physically playing the bass? How did you learn that?
A lot of it was by ear. I had a teacher. Actually, I had Randy Coven from back.
Really?
Yes, was
Sammy
teaching.
said out.
Sammy said out. Very, very good. Randy Coven was teaching at Focus 2 Guitar Centers in Comac, Long Island. And I didn't know who Randy Coven was at the time, but I knew after the first lesson who Randy Coven, what he was. And I took lessons with him for a little while. And then I took lessons with someone who leaned a little bit more towards jazz, who would make me sing every solo, find simple solos and then make me sing them, because if you can't play it, if you can't sing it, was his theory. And after 3 years, let's just say, of constant playing, the Hondo was gone, and my father took me, because my father worked in the city. He was a construction worker. We went, I would meet him sometimes in Manhattan, and we would go down to 48th Street.
48th Street. I was waiting for you to say 48th Street.
Of course, I'm a New Yorker. I'm a downstate New Yorker. So we went down to 48th Street, and we walked into
Manny, Sam Ash, and Rudy's,
Alex's, and We Buy Guitars, and so we would go there. We would end the day at Tower Records, him buying 5 albums and me buying 5 albums, and then on the Long Island Railroad, reading the liner notes, which was a joy that's long gone. that young people today, well, there's a resurgence of albums, but it wasn't the same getting an album and if it was a double album. So anyway, I digress. We walk in.
That sounds like a great memory right there.
It's a wonderful memory. I'm going through all these maybe Black Sabbath, Technical Ecstasy, or I'm going through a Judas Priest album. I was big into that in those days, into heavy metal. I mean, my tastes have varied incredibly over the years, but that's what I was into.
You think as an interest in what your dad was reading about on his records, or was he interested in what you're reading about? What about?
No, there was no cross.
You were both in.
No, he was more. He was more blinders on. So much so that he would say, like, I hate to use the word hate, but he would say, like, I hate hip hop music. And I would say, so all of it? You've heard all of it that you could say I said, how about it might just be semantics, but how about saying, of what I've heard, I've yet to find anything that I care for. Just like I'm not a huge country and Western fan, but take me to Nashville because I could separate the music from the musicianship. I might not dig bluegrass, but when I see some cats on stage just smoking on their instruments, I can, or a beautiful ballad, I could separate the music from the musician.
I remember being into Roy Clark and Chet Atkins, and back in the day.
I discovered Roy Clark from The Odd Couple.
Oh yeah, he played the Mozart Sonata in C.
Yeah, very good.
I remember that. I remember that show.
Yeah.
And well, so I'm going to start speaking differently now. From most of what I heard of rap music, I hate it.
Okay.
Although around 1990, Quincy Jones put out an album called Back on the Block, which I like most of it, actually. I like a lot of it. Well, he had Miles and Joe Zawinul and George Benson and James Moody and Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan. I mean, it's just an unbelievable list of heavyweight jazz players on that record.
Of course. I'll tell you what I like about it, though. If you break it down rhythmically, and as bass players, we're tied to the rhythm. It's in our soul. The way, I don't care for all rap, but I care for intelligent rap, and that's not an oxymoron. The way that the person rapping can take where the beats work with the syllables, work with the beats, the syllables of the words intertwine around the beats. Plus, they're also telling a story. So when I hear the way they pronounce certain words, where the syllable breaks are in compared to the beat, or if there's a triplet and they're singing a line, if the kick drum is where they'll flow occasionally, they'll come up with a word with 3 syllables to hit that beat. So it's the way they flow and weave in and out of the groove that the bass and drum is the foundation, the pocket, if you will. And that's what about rap I dig, especially if they're telling me a story, and like someone like Lauryn Hill, or Wyclef Jean, the Fugees, Lauryn Hill playing in touring right now. To me, the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, one of the greatest hip hop albums to come out of all time. I'm old school hip hop, but just finishing the story before we walked into Manny's. I'm sorry to change the subject. I just wanted to finish that.
Oh, it's my fault. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's okay. There were
I'll just say I'll listen to rap with a more open mind, but I'll
send you some.
Like I hate to sound like an old.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
It all sounds the same to me,
and that's fair. That's fair. But I would say to you, I'd say to you, you know what? Maybe there's other, because there's genres and subgenres of subgenres of subgenres. Just like in my bio, I'm alt rock and I'm post rock and I'm prog rock. What does that really mean? Alt and post and grunge and shoegaze and all these tech words. So, but I could also listen to Bolero and it will make me cry because that's from my father. So I can't listen to Ravel's Bolero, just the first instrument playing the first melody, which will go around and around and around as you're aware, without literally a tear coming to my eye before the timpanis come in at the very end. Or I have a tattoo on my arm which is rondo, and so if you open me up, it is music. It's and that's Rondo and Capricioso for violin by Saint-Saëns, who is one of my father's favorite composers. And I can't listen to Introduction to Rondo and Capricioso without breaking down because it's so beautiful. In fact, I had a Fiverr try to transcribe it to 5-string bass. It's 8 octaves on a violin, right? A violin is 8 octaves. So yeah, with the harmonics, they can pull out 8. They could pull out 8 octaves. I mean, I have a 36 fret 4-string. I can get 3 octaves the most out of it. So I tried to have a composer or somebody put it, but it was way too difficult as opposed to 6-string, where it's much more vertical playing. So anyway, to finish out the story, we walk into Manny's, and I immediately go to a Ovation Magnum bass. Why? Because it was 1980s, and Ross Valerie from Journey played an Ovation Magnum bass, and my father said, "How much for the 75 jazz bass, all original, Fender?" I said, "Dad, the Ovation." He said, "How much for the 75 jazz bass?" And they told him, and he bought it for me. He said, just trust me on this one." And he passed, my old man, about 12 years ago, and that's the 75 jazz bass that he bought me. I could pull out a 75 jazz bass. I don't still have it, if that was the coming question.
Was he right? Did he make the right choice?
Oh, yes. I mean, there are basses here from all over the world. I take pride.
Oh, I mean that particular instance, that the
Yes,
75
yes.
jet.
If you cut me, I bleed Fender. Fender is an old pair of jeans for me. There are bass players here. There are literally luthiers from all over the world that I speak to on the daily. I mean, I love a lot of German luthiers and Polish luthiers and Czech luthiers and American luthiers. I have 27 Rickenbackers I'm looking at right now. 15 Padulas. All different types of basses, JDs, Stratis, Marlows, Maruschicks. But if it all came down to it, and I could only play one brand of bass, it would be a pre-CBS. It would be any Fender bass, depending on price range. But a pre-CBS Fender bass, to me, the right one.
Jazz or precision or what?
It's funny you say that. Forever I was jazz. Forever I was jazz. And then I found a P bass with a jazz neck, and that's all it took. As a matter of fact, this is a recent acquisition. 1960, all original P. And I'm not a religious guy, John, but if a bass was ever kissed by God, then I recently got this. The nice part about Bass Upfront, and people knowing that I like to buy basses, I get kind of first dibs before someone puts it on Reverb or eBay or Craigslist. Hey, I got this bass for sale. I'd be willing to do a quick flip. And they're looking to do a quick flip. They don't want to go through the whole rigmarole, right? All the chazarai that goes with having to sell a bass online. So I'm happy to say, either yes or no, but it's kind of nice to get first dibs. Not so much in my bank account. I just bought a Simonetti the other day, and I'm like, I never had one of those before. Okay, I did a little reading on it. I said, all right. And it's funny, I reached out to somebody on Reverb the other day to buy a 4005 Chris Squire model Rickenbacker and a 4001 CS. And out of all the Ricks that I have and the rare Ricks that I have, I never bought a 4001 CS. And I put an ad on the Reverb. Somebody put one up on Reverb. I gave them a counter offer, and they hit me up on Bass Upfront. They said, "I'm a member. I recognize your name. Okay, and it's here. I got to go pick it up a little later over at the FedEx." So Fender and Rickenbacker, but I could also say, Padulas and Maruschik basses and Strati basses. And I just, people say, how do you know what to play? Like, how do you pick what to play? Well, when I gig, I generally gig a Fender a 2019 postmodern Fender Precision bass, but it's a custom shop bass, but it comes stock with a jazz neck. And it's funny, it's a precision bass, but it says jazz on the neck. But that's the sound because I play in a heavier sounding. I mean, I would almost say the band, and I don't mean to jump around too much straight to Apollo's Ghost, but it's sort of like a cross between the Police meets Soundgarden, meets a Radiohead, meets Black Sabbath. It's a very interesting because we're three pieces and we're instrumental. There's no rules.
Some of your YouTube videos. Great stuff.
Thank you.
What,
Thank you.
what about the sound? How much does it affect the sound when you take a classic P bass and put a jazz neck on it?
I don't know if it affects the sound. I'm not, my ears aren't as well tuned in as most audiophiles who know the difference when 1 dB is off. They could hear it, right? I used to say that Neil Peart was one of the most sweetest guys, but he played octapads also. And he knew that he could tell within 3 dB if something was off, right? I always say, what's it like to have ears like that, a perfect pitch? For me, it's the feel of a jazz neck. I don't mind playing on a P neck. I mean, but it depends because those years, Fender and Rickenbacker, when you go back to the earlier stuff, there seemed to be very little consistency. Yes, the nut is either 1.5 or 1.75, but the depth of the neck in first position, I play quite a bit up. I'm more of a melodic bass player because in my band, my guitar player is not a shredder. He likes to go into some alternative tuning and lay down an atmosphere. Our drummer lays down a groove, and that gives me the freedom to throw down a drop D or a drop C, and then maybe hit a freeze pedal and let that ring for a while, and then play melody, not solos, but just the licks, the themes on the bass. And that's freed me up to realize that running up and down the neck, I prefer a thinner jazz neck. So a P bass with a jazz neck is the way to go for me. What about you?
That sounds perfect.
You're a jazz
I grew up. Yeah, I grew up with a jazz bass, and then when I got down to Miami, I went to University of Miami, and I got down there, and this was in '84. God, it's coming up on 40 years ago. And all the guys were saying, "Oh, EMG pickups, man! Got to get EMG. Everybody, EMG pickups." So I said, "Okay." So I replaced the pickups with EMGs, and then I got a modulus graphite neck, and then I got a Schaller bridge, and then I was driving across the country to LA, and I knew there was a place in Arizona at the time. It's called the Bass Place in Glendale, Arizona. And I thought to myself, should I, shouldn't I? And I said, when am I going to be driving through Glendale, Arizona again? So I went to that place, bought a Chandler body. So that was my main bass for a long time. I could put my whole jazz bass back together again. And now I've got one that I play. It's are you familiar with Stonefield?
No, but I am familiar with modulus. It's one of my favorite necks on the planet. So I happen to have one, and what I love about it is the cutaway.
Yes.
But I'm sorry, no,
I
I'm not familiar with Stonefield basses. But please tell me.
bought it from Jeff Gould directly
Oh,
in 19.
yeah.
So the Stonefield, there's a good friend of mine, Tom Stanley. Tom is spelled with 2 M's. He said he had a girlfriend one time that liked to have Tom spelled with 2 M's. So he started spelling it that way. And the girlfriend is long gone out of his life, but he's still Tom with 2 M's. So I
Okay.
signed my name in, and he knows my son Adams, ADAM. Anyway, he's got a beautiful product, and he asked me if I could hold on to one and just use it for product placement. I have it in my digital courses and my lessons. I said, yeah,
Is he still
sure.
Is he still building?
Yeah, he's in New Zealand.
Let's put it
I
up.
could,
Let's put it up on base up front. Let's get the guy some business, or get him some. You know what? I'm happy to. We're all about bring, like Sunday. We have theme every day. We have a theme, and Sunday is support small Sunday. Support small business Sunday, and everyone comes out with one-offs, and it turns everybody on to all these cool bases that they've never seen before. And it's like, who's this builder? And then here I am Sunday night going through websites of, wow, look at this. As a matter of fact, I just ordered a Ristic base, Ristic, and a Kemmerer base from John Kemmerer. You might know that name, but I had never heard of these guys before. But I listened to demos. I ordered a Grossman base to be built from Romania, and I'm just into trying out all different sounds. But again, if it comes back down to it, every producer, when you go into record, every engineer wants to see. I think they're watching that bass, but please pull out a P bass. Please pull out a P bass. Please don't pull out something like, oh, I don't know if it's right here. I have a shoot. It might be over at the other location. Anyway, it's a Sims Enfield Belladonna. And I think it would take an MBA from MIT to understand the preamp. It's got 17 different knobs and switches and controls, and some players dig that. Like, I have a wall bass. I don't play it very often. I too many tonal options. I'm not good
you
with.
remind me of, remember Trace Elliott amps?
Of course.
I don't know where to begin. It's like just, or the same concept with a bass that has like a million strings. Okay, my first question is there an EADG in there somewhere? Let's start there.
Yeah.
But anyway, so in answer to your question, I Fender Jazz is what I came up on, and then I was in Rudy's on 48th Street in around 1988, I think. And I started playing a Tobias 5-string. Absolutely fell in love with it. Went back the next day.
And a fantastic guy, Michael Tobias.
He is. I've interviewed him on a few times. I know him quite well. Him and Daniel. So I'm thinking, you know what? We're going to be playing. I was on the road, so we're going to LA like later this week. I'm going to hook up with Mike Tobias. And so his shop was on Cahuenga back when he was in California. And he took me through and showed me all these woods and necks and this and that. And he says, I'll build you anything you want. But once it's built, it's built. I can't change anything. And I said, oh, I wish you could build one like the one I saw in Rudy's. I kept talking about it. And he says, well, if you like that one so much, call up Rudy, see if he still got it. So I called him up, gave him my credit card over the phone. I got back to Miami, and it's waiting for me.
What year was this?
1988.
88. All right. 88. Yeah. 48th Street is it's not what it used to be.
No, I know. I've been back there many times. I took my son, like in 2010. I said, this used to be quite a shrine to
Mecca.
Absolutely.
It used to be Mecca, but now Rudy's is still there, and Sam Ash is, I won't say anything disparaging, but Rudy's is now down on the Lower East Side, and it's still a beautiful store. Rudy's is still a beautiful store.
A guy named Dean, is he still there?
I don't know. I don't know the players intimately. I do a lot of my buying online. I don't find myself. So quite often when people see pictures of my collection, they'll ask, are you a dealer? Are you a dealer? Are you a dealer? No. And because Bass Player has a healthy amount of active members, I am approached by a lot of luthiers asking me, especially up and coming luthiers, would I be willing, right? Because the main guys have their distributors. But I get asked, would you like to be a distributor for us? And no, that's really not the path that I'm leaning towards as far as I've been corporate America for my day gig. as many professional musicians sadly still have to have a day gig also. Uh, I have plans to leave corporate America sometime over maybe the next year or two, and I would like to travel the world exploring musics of all nations, of different countries, and do this professionally, not just landing in Reykjavik and interviewing the local band. It would be going to Switzerland and going to see at a college that there's what is music and how does it help autistic patients, or maybe go to Laos. What is it like to go? Okay, your music, you're a band. What is it like to go shopping for guitars here? Sort of like what Anthony Bourdain did with food.
I read that about you somewhere in some bio. Okay, that's
That is my goal. I People love music and people love food. And I clearly I'm not shy. I've been in sales forever. I've gotten up and spit. I have no problem getting up. And if I know the subject, and it's not this would be for music, it would be bass heavy, bass centric, because I'm a bass
my
player.
wife has told me that that's what I should do. She loves to travel, and I love to travel. And everywhere we've been to Italy, and we've been to Germany and London, and all over. We've been to France. So she says you should do exactly what you're talking about. Maybe we should team up.
We should talk about that. I mean, between the contacts, and just your contact list would dwarf mine, I'm sure. But
Oh,
over the last couple of years, myself and the bass up front crew. We're at NAMM every year. We're at the Mannheim show. We just got back from the Mannheim show in Germany, which is my favorite event of the year.
that was on our
Um,
radar. We looked into that. What's the guy's name that runs that? Rosen's. What's his name? There
no,
were two
Rosengarten.
guys.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, they came up to us and thanked us for coming all the way. They're young guys, those guys, and
Yeah,
they thanked us. We're on their video. They asked if we could do a little video on what it means to us and why would we come over. I mean, it's 5.5 hours for me to land at LAX. It's 6.5 hours for me to land at Frankfurt. I mean, why wouldn't I come? I think it's the finest show. I mean, this year, later, no, later next year, there's one in Padua, Italy, which is supposed to be a big one, not a small one. And then October of 24 in Japan is supposed to be a massive bass and guitar show. And I've never been to Japan. I mean, I've been all over Europe. I like to travel, but Italy and Japan for a guitar show and bring my
I
fiance.
did a tour of Japan in 1992 when I was living in LA, and
You
this
were
was
big
with
in
a chorus.
Japan. Hit me with the cliche.
The Roger Wagner Chorale. It was 20 singers, a
Wow.
piano player, and me on bass, and the conductor. And we went all over Japan and Korea. We were supposed to go to Taiwan for 3 days, but that part of the trip got canceled. So we had 3 free days. Some people went to Disneyland, which I thought would have been very interesting. Some people went to other parts of the country. I climbed Mount Fuji. I thought
Wow.
that's more of a once in a lifetime opportunity. So
That
I did
that's what
that.
I'm talking about. Doing things like that. I'm a huge fan of Anthony Bourdain. I won't say was. I still am an Anthony Bourdain fan, and I think if he could do it, while I don't profess to have the personality, nor we're all our own people. I could talk music all day long. I gave a little speech. So when Bass Up Front, the admin crew, shout out to Chris and Lauren and Guillermo and Sam and Bryant and Lauren, which are our administrators. When we go to these shows, we'll generally take out on the Saturday night 25 to 35 bass luthiers and players. We'll take them out to dinner. So we're known as throwing the Saturday night dinner, and we pick up the bill. And just to be a name dropper, just a few weeks ago at our restaurant that we had booked, we had Sheldon Dingwall sitting next to Gerald Marlowe, sitting next to Marek Dabik from Strati, sitting next to Tom Eish, sitting next to, and I could just keep dropping names, Nicolo Adamovich, sitting next to Gregor Fries from Base the World, sitting next to Nolly Getgood, right? Sitting next to, or Remco Hendricks, and yeah, this is the event. And then, of course, Marek from Strati, who is a good friend of mine, said best 6 hours of the show was this dinner and this get together. And brand new luthiers who are sitting next to Nikola Adamovich, Sander Dahir, and Gerald Marlowe. I mean, so it's a friendship. At 55 years old, it's not easy to make friends. I mean, because we're so many people are judgmental, and we're a little jaded. But I walk into a grocery store and someone sees this and they happen to be a bass player, and then all of a sudden no problem. At first, had this guy just given me a glare, and I might have given him from Brooklyn, I give him a glare back, and we go but if I see that, or he's got a shirt on, a bass player or musician, or, well, there's a commonality. And all the friends that are made at these dinners, and we do it if you're coming to NAMM, please come to dinner with us. Then you're invited to our dinner. It would be an honor to have you there. Consider it done. Morton's Saturday night. It's right there. It's going to be a blast. And yeah, well, we'll try to keep some people out. Yeah, Bass Upfront is really,
that's what I want to talk about. What is Bass Upfront, and why did you start it, and how did you attract such a following, and what do you want everybody to know about it? Because I think it's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate you joining. When I went to go shout you out, when I heard back from you saying, yeah, let's do an interview, I put up a post, and I saw that, when you put up Facebook and then you put someone's name, if they're a member or not, I see that you joined, and I was psyched. And Bass Upfront is an oasis in respect that it's bullshit free, it's drama free, it's judgment free. It's bass players who just want to talk about bass, or show pictures off of their bass, or talk about anything bass related. If you picked up your first Glary or Harley Benton today and you played your first note, but your desire is to be a bass player, well, then you're a bass player. Welcome to Bass Upfront. If you just came off the road on your 40th world tour and you've been playing for 50 years at the largest arenas in the world, welcome to Bass Upfront. You're treated no different than the person. I mean, we're more excited, clearly, that this person might be on, but everyone is welcome. It doesn't make it matter if you play with a pick or not. It doesn't matter if you play 4, 5, or 6 strings or not. We immediately get rid of any kind of spam or troublemaker. And I could tell you right now, I've had to remove less than a dozen. Every now and then there's a lively personality who'll come in, but it's a welcoming vibe. We have a Bass Porn Monday, which is show us your beautiful basses, and then Tuesdays, Tear It Up Tuesday, your favorite gig shots, and that gets tons of posts. And then Wood Top Wednesday, Natural Wood, or Thunder Thursday, or Throwback Thursday, or and then Freedom Friday, post whatever you want. Saturday is New Member Day, and we're bringing in about 200 new members a week. And then Sunday is a small builder Sunday, whether it's pedals or amps. But it's just become a really, really nice community where you can come and you could write anything and no one would be like, "Boy, you're an idiot. You don't know how to adjust your truss rod? What are you, an idiot? Oh yeah, your mother's an idiot." There is just, and it's mostly because we can look at the analytics. It's mostly older players, but
Uh-huh.
lately we've been getting a lot of younger players, which is awesome to see them not so much in GarageBand pulling loops. And there's a place for that, dragging loops into a grid and then hit quantize and everything lines up on time on the one. But to see kids actually playing bass and playing, to see 10-year-old young ladies playing James Jamerson riffs. And
Alan Oliver, I interviewed her.
yeah, I'm sure you did. We met her at NAMM. She really has some killer chops, no joke. I mean, she's got chops. There's quite a few young ladies in her age bracket that are coming up. They should be more in the spotlight, right? Young
Based
people
up
should.
front, by the way, based up front, there's no website, right? It's just the Facebook group.
It's okay. So there is a YouTube channel starting. So I've just recently hired a videographer from California who is one of I don't want to drop the name, but one of Hollywood's biggest actors. I know his side videographer. Like if he has an idea and he wants to go spend the day, this is without calling the movie production companies, and he is this videographer is a son of one of my best friends. So I reached out to him. So he actually came to NAMM with me. I flew him in, and we did our interviews at NAMM. I am going to start doing some pilots for this show that I ultimately want to do, where there's traveling and it's bass related and music related and musician related. And I also get asked all the times, like the question you asked me earlier, is there a tonal difference between a P bass with a J neck or a P neck? Well, I have room here, and I just recently bought all the cameras and the microphones like you have to do things like this. So look out for the Bass Up Front YouTube channel, and then I'll be starting a channel called Here's Where It's At, but it's HEARS, as in Here's Where It's At. And
On podcast or YouTube? What's it going to be?
podcast YouTube, and hopefully that will be the catalyst to maybe be, if it takes off well enough and the pilots are professional enough and someone is interested in what I'm creating, maybe CNN, maybe Fox, not Fox, maybe CNN, maybe the Travel Channel, maybe PBS, or maybe just a YouTube influencer. I mean, look, it's hard to walk away from corporate America day gig money. So I've been in the industry since 1989, and I'm comfortable. And change is scary, especially at 55. Change is scary. But if you don't wake up every morning excited about what you're going to do that day, and I don't mean to sound cliche, and I know that once it becomes a job, even music could end up becoming mundane, but it's a lot less mundane than a job that you dislike. And it's just, I put in my dues from 1989. I don't want to name the industry that I'm in, but from 1989 to 2023, being in the same industry, I'm just ready to spread my wings now and take
That's
this.
me from 1990 to 2016. I was in corporate America.
Can I ask in what vein?
It was a family business. It was a school, for radio and TV broadcasting, and I expanded it into graphic design and digital media. And I was there for 26 years. My dad started it, and I took over and grew the company. And we had a couple locations. And
Wow.
it was time to leave after I had started for bass players only, actually, from a hospital bed in New York. I have a neurological movement disorder. It's very similar to Parkinson's, but it's not degenerative. And, I get around okay. I can still play, thankfully, and I can do whatever I want to do. But I was at Mayo Clinic 3 times. I was at University of Michigan. I went to Cleveland Clinic. I was in Detroit. I was all over. So I went to Muhammad Ali's doctor in New York for 10 days at one of the hospitals there. What am I going to do for 10 days? So I had gotten some software and a couple of how-to books, and I'm busy on Google, and I started this website, and I had no idea it was going to take off the way it did. I
Wow.
knew less than nothing about what so and the business just started to grow, and people were attracted to it, and there were a lot of bass players. And I had done everything that there was to do in this business, and I was happy, and it was it was all good, left on friendly terms, and just dove into the business and started expanding the membership and making my digital courses. And the interviews have been going on since June 15th, 2009.
I've
Never
walked
missed.
past you at many of events, sitting on a couch somewhere with Bootsy Collins, or and I could just forever say names. I've walked past you at numerous events, sitting down with people. I actually sat next to you. You won't remember.
Bass Player Live.
Yeah, we sat next to each other at Bass Player Live. The last one they had at Sir Studios, right? Was that a SIR? That was a SIR, right?
IR, yeah. In Hollywood,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. What?
Sunset.
Why are they all going away? Music
Well,
Mesa.
they were acquired. They were
Yeah,
acquired.
by
I
some
went to
British company, right?
yeah,
You
that's
did the
called
Music
Future.
Mesa.
I was there in 2016, right after I left the company.
I've
And
never gotten a chance.
I went there, and people were saying, "Oh, this is not what it used to be." Well, I don't know what it used to be. This is the first time here, and get away! You're bringing me down. I thought, as big as the NAMM show is, or was, I guess will be again, but this was like 4 times bigger, and they're adding on to it. So after I did all my business, I interviewed Ned Steinberger and talked to the PV guys and Roland and all that. I did everything that there was to do. I got some interviews, and I made a lot of good contacts. I had about a half a day left over, so I started walking through where all the flutes are, and the ouds and the bassoons, and all the different instruments that you don't see at you don't see at Guitar Center. But there was a contrabass flute that you had to stand on a ladder to play. I mean, just
Yeah, yeah,
crazy
yeah.
stuff.
It's
And
amazing to experiment with stuff like that.
yeah. But it turned out it didn't really make a lot of sense for me to go to that show. I went there to try to do business with people that don't go to the NAMM show. And I ended up with Steinberger, who's in Nobleboro, Maine, and PV, it's in Meridian, Mississippi, all the way to Germany to get these guys.
But I
And
highly suggest the Germany, the Mannheim Guitar and Bass Summit. It first of
you
all, no.
mentioned Gerald Marno a couple of times. I love Gerald. He's such a
Oh, what
great
a
guy.
sweet, sweet man. He took us around his booth, and then at dinner we sat and we spoke for a while, and then I reached out to him because he has those new Spock basses that just came out, and he wrote, "I would love to help you build a very special, unique Spock bass." And Gerald Marlowe, to someone who is a truck driver or a lawyer, they bump into Gerald Marlowe, they're like, yeah, okay, the guy makes guitars. But to me, or to many of us, it's like, that's Gerald Marlowe. That's, I still get awestruck. I'm still like a fanboy of whenever I meet.
Possible not, yeah, it's impossible not to like Gerald Marlowe. I
I,
just
I absolutely agree. And what's nice about the Mannheim show is that there's no amplifiers. You have to play through headphones. So as opposed
Oh,
to the cacophony of Nam having to step outside to have silence as your intermezzo, right? At NAM, we could have a conversation at this volume, no problem. And they have concerts going on because it's in a big concert hall. And so when the doors are, it's built so well, it's German engineering. When the doors are closed, silent. When you open it up, thunderous applause, or a rocking band, the doors close, silent. So they could
but
have
I like,
demos.
yeah, I like Frankfurt. Frankfurt is nice. I have flown in and out of there. I don't know, about 5 times or so, because I used to get invited to the Warwick music camps, and
Yeah.
I did that 3, 4 times,
Those
something
are
like
over
that.
too.
That was, yeah, that those are not coming back. But it was great hanging with, having dinner with Chuck Rainey and Jerry Jamot and Robert Trujillo from Metallica and David Ellefson from Megadeth and Bobby Vega and Victor Wooten and Steve Vai and just
You just named my favorite
uh,
bass player. My favorite bass player. It's tough to pick one, but Bobby Vega.
Adam Petty, Gary Willis. I mean, it was just awesome. Abe Laboriel. Just,
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's to me, that's heaven. I mean, oh my God, just to
you're
hang.
all together in the same place, so you have all your meals together. And there's nowhere to go. So it's Ralph Armstrong. It's just awesome. Just one thing about Bass Up Front. If somebody
Sure.
wants to go there, they go to Facebook and put Bass Up Front, or what?
That's
Is
it.
that
Just
all
go
they
to,
need to do?
yeah, yeah. We don't have membership drives or, oh, what we do, I'd like to shout out is we we every post that someone puts up has to be approved, but it's generally approved within minutes. And the reason why the content grows so much is because we interact. In How to Win Friends and Influence People, which I've read 10,000 times, the reoccurring theme is people want to feel important. Everyone wants to feel important. So when someone puts up a post, don't ignore it. I mean, there's only so much time in the day, and you really can't be glued, and there's other things that have to go on. But if you're going to dedicate, let's say, okay, so I have base up front and I have responsibility. So I'm going to take 2 hours out of the day, an hour in the morning, or half hour, half hour, half hour, half hour, go through all the new posts and answer the questions. If I post a picture and someone asks me a question, and the admins, they answer also, and we interact with people. And I've had people from all over the world come here. And when we hit certain milestones, I take one of my bases and I raffle it off. And we do a raffle, $10 per raffle ticket. And all that money goes to musiccares.org. Every penny we get, we've given musiccares.org tens of thousands of dollars. I've raffled off my Fender Aerodyne, a Music Man Sterling, a Geddy Lee Fender Jazz, a signature jazz bass, and I don't recoup the money. Okay, let's say we collected $5,000. It cost me $1,000, so we have all of it. The shirts that we sell online, all that money goes to charity. We're not in this to monetize this. It costs us money. We're in this just to bring unity to the bass brotherhood. They say, and I don't want to be disparaging to guitar players because we need them, but they say you put two guitar players, you put two bass players in the room, you have friends. You put two guitar players in a room, you have competition.
It's
You
true.
know,
That's very true.
and the bass community is very tight. I've purchased a lot of basses from people, and think about it. You go up on Facebook or something that's not Reverb or eBay or now I'm sure or Craigslist, and I'm sure people have been burnt. Every now and then someone gets burnt. I have over 230 bases. I've never been burned. And it's not because I'm me, it's just because I think the bass community. So here someone is, they write an ad, I call them, speak to them for 5 minutes, and next thing I know, I've just PayPal them $3,000. I don't know this person from Adam. I did a little bit of my due diligence, checking them out online. They've been online for a while. We share a lot of the same friends, but it'll also be the same thing. All of a sudden, I'll have $3,000. You've just been And now it's up to me to say either, hey, I'm going to screw this guy, or I'm going to send him the bass that I promised him for 3,000. And I've yet to come across a situation. If I think it's going to be a little bit sketchy, I'll pass on it. But I've yet to be burnt. And people will watch this interview and say, well, I got burnt. Well, okay, every now and then, but very, very rarely. And I speak to a lot of bass players. Do I hear stories, or is there a recurring theme of people getting burned? I think bass players, because we know we're foundational players, we're supportive players. That's our role. And bass up front came from, I always had a proclivity for the bass players who played up front, for John Paul Jones, for Chris Squire, who is a bass deity to me, for Entwistle, who played up front, for Geddy Lee, who played up front, for a lot of players who played up front. That's where the up front comes from. But I also have tremendous respect for the cat who sits in the back playing quarter note pocket grooves. There's a time and a space for that. When you're serving the song, right? The difference is when you're stepping out, but know when to bring it back to serve the song. And a whole note could be a friend. Space is just as important as your notes, right? Knowing
Sounds
when
like
not.
exactly the bass player's version of Freddie Green.
Yeah,
Freddie
yeah,
Green from Count Basie. It's on two and
yeah.
four. Better than anyone.
That's
I
right.
want to ask you about learning bass, because for bass players only is primarily an instruction site. And I've got people from pretty much all 50 states now and some, I don't know, 50, 60
Excellent.
countries coming to for bass players only every day to learn bass, and most of them are the older guys, similar to yours. Before you got the young guys coming in, most of them are men, but 91%. We're getting more women actually now, but the reason I mention that is just to give you a context. They're not career bound. A lot of them have been in corporate America for a long time. Maybe they're retired or semi-retired. Most of them, a lot of them are over 50. They're adults. And they just want to get together, play some like rock riffs with their buddies, or some walking bass, or some blues shuffles, or maybe a little funk R&B. Sometimes the arthritis and the tendonitis and those things kick in when you get to be 50, 60, 70. I had a guy sign up the other day, 83 years old.
Good for him.
So what advice can you impart to somebody like that who wants to learn bass and doesn't have to have 230 basses and doesn't have to do all the electronic and the keyboard bass and all the others? They just want to play. So what do you think is important for them to know? What should they be thinking about in their quest to learn bass?
That's, you know what? It's such an easy and such a complex answer all at the same time. But the easy way is experiment. Go out and find yourself a bass that is set up properly, or make sure, I've been to stores before. Speaking in Germany, we were right outside of Cologne, where they had one of the largest. It's called the Music Store. It's massive, and massive bass section. But the necks it was like when they came in, nobody bothered to set them up. So my advice to a new player is, first of all, find an instrument that you're comfortable with. And if you're going to a store, ask them if they would do a quick setup. Let them know that you're interested. But now you don't know from, can you lower the action? Can you fix the tension? Especially if you're new. But can you set this up to a comfortable playing style? Or the instrument that you buy, your first instrument, I would definitely take it to a tech, because I found, when doing a little teaching on my own, just some basics, an instrument that's easy to play is an instrument that you will gravitate more towards. If the string tension is really difficult, and that can be corrected, right? You can get looser tension strings. You can lower the height. You could change the action. And just put in a little bit of time every day. It'll come. Don't expect it. This could be with any instrument. Don't expect to be a virtuoso overnight. Think about it. If Bill Gates or any of the richest men in the world, they can't learn any faster than you can, a beginner can. You can't buy your way with no matter how much money you have, you can't buy your way into becoming an amazing player. It takes time and practice. And even if you don't want to be an amazing player, I highly suggest taking lessons. And I'm not a big fan. This is just me personally. I'm not a big fan of online lessons wherein there are modules. I like the knee to knee approach, especially with a teacher where once a week or twice a week or every other week, or once you've gotten the lesson down via Zoom, you get to talk and play and show. I mean, I study with Steve Lawson. I tracked him down for 8 months to try to get Steve because 90% of the time I'm in my studio playing by myself. I'm gigging. I gig twice a month. I play with the band, once or twice a week. But 90% of the time, and I play a few hours every day. I want to. Those lessons are crucial to me. I found a teacher that I got along with, and just look forward to those lessons every week. I feel I'm like I'm 5 inches off the ground. Oh, what are you? All this has been under my fingertips this whole time. And I'd also just want to finish that up with 40 plus years I've been playing. And when I take lessons with my teacher, I feel like I'm still on page one. And that's awesome. I still consider myself an intermediate bass player. I'll always consider myself an intermediate bass player because whenever I turn something on and I hear, somebody with, I hear Richard Bona play, it immediately humbles me and sends me right back to the woodshed. Just watching Richard Bona gives me one. Sorry, you could edit that out. The play, you could edit out that play on words. Uh,
I interviewed him at a NAMM show a few years ago.
yeah,
Very,
I met
very
I
nice.
met him and it might have been the same one, like the year before COVID, it might have been, or the year after.
Yeah. I haven't
Uh,
been since COVID.
he Richard Bona to me. My two favorite bass players are very ironically, very different. Bobby Vega and Richard Bona, couldn't be any more different players. But stick with it. Stick with it. You're not going to be a monster right away, but stick with it. Play with other musicians. Victor Wooten talks about that a lot. He said when you learn how to speak, you don't practice speaking to yourself. You practice speaking by engaging in conversation. And I love that analogy. So I speak to you, you speak to me through instruments. Get a drummer. In addition to having a teacher, go to School of Music. What is that called? School of Music, School of Rock, and they put musicians together. School of Rock. They put musicians together who don't know how to get into a band, but they put the players together. And I've seen some really, you can have a 14-year-old drummer, a 55-year-old bass player, a 32-year-old singer. They put you together depending on your skill level, and you have a band
Cool.
and
I
you
like
meet other
that.
musicians. So I definitely recommend taking lessons and finding the right teacher. The right teacher is everything. If you find that the lessons are not the way you want to go, say something to the teacher. Tell them what direction you want to go to. Most will be accommodating, and practice. You can't get past practice, right, John? I mean, even what are they? There's that line from that 96-year-old cellist. I can't remember his name. There's a meme, and they say like, "Why do you still practice 4 hours every day?" And he said, "Because I think I'm getting better." This is like the world's most famous cellist, Pablo Casal.
Styles, I think.
Pablo Casal, right?
Styles.
Yeah, and they say, "Why do you still practice every day?" And he's because I think I'm getting better. There is no finish line.
Right. And
I
I agree, it is important to have a teacher, and it's great to have that instant feedback. But even with the online thing, like on my site, for example, people contact me all the time. They ask questions. I invite them to send me videos so that they can get that feedback as well. And I do a lot of online interaction as well.
You do
So
one to one what your on your lessons?
no, I've got jillions of students members all over, but
Yeah,
I do invite them to contact me, and many of them take me up on it, and
yeah.
I'm always happy to even non-students. I do that. That's I'm
What I
just
was
happy.
referring to before was is stay linear
Mhm.
when you're learning. Where you're with, you're not jumping around from this person teaching this to this person teaching this. You're not scouring YouTube and learning from 10 or 15 different people. Stick with one person. You know what? I remember taking a course online that Phil Mann was giving, and
Yeah,
it was on harmonics. And I was big into harmonics at that time, learning how to play harmonic scales up and down the bass in harmonics. And but I stayed with Phil Mann throughout that whole. I didn't go looking around. I didn't take one and then go looking around. Next teacher to teach. I followed the course out, and I got out of it what I was hoping to get out
yeah.
of it. So
You can find what you're looking for on YouTube. You just have to sift through so much stuff and test it and see if it works and see if this person is a bozo or if they're good or if they know what they're doing. I mean, it's out there. So,
yep.
there are sites like mine where, it's all together in one place that's got the credibility there that
I can't believe you have students from 50 different countries. That's amazing.
something like that, 50, 60, I don't know. But once in a while I get a country I never heard of. Like, okay, if you have internet, yeah, and a base.
Yeah,
I do have a final question for you,
sure.
David. What would you be if you weren't a bass player? Something outside of music. And I know you get the corporate thing, but if you can put that aside, what would you want to be other than play the bass? What other passion do
Profession,
you have?
professionally,
Whatever, however you want to answer that is fine. What would you be if you weren't a bass player?
a bass player, a musician. Um, I can't. You know what? Not to deviate from your question. I don't have an immediate answer because I've never pondered what it would be like to not be a bass player. There's a great meme that says a day without playing bass is like, I don't know. I don't know what it is, right? And it's sort of like that. I don't know what I would be. I knew if I wasn't in corporate America, I would be hustling my ass off to do more in the way of music to make that my profession. John, I have to give you an I don't know to that answer.
I get that answer a lot, and some people know it, like Tommy Stinson from Guns N' Roses. Oh, I'd be a TV weatherman. Oh, I always wanted to be a TV man. Or Rhonda Smith, who played with Jeff Beck for all that time in Prince, and I would be a stock analyst, broker, whatever it is. She's into the market and the trading and all that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I mean, I'm in
some
sales.
interesting.
I'm in sales. I like speaking to people. I guess maybe I can't. I'd be a musician, and I'd find a way around. If that's my only answer. I'd be in
I
music.
asked I ask everyone that question. When I asked Richard Bona that question, he thought for 1 second and he says, "If I was not a bass player, I would be a bass player."
That's what I said. That was my first answer. A bass
You
player.
go.
Right. What would you
All
be?
right.
What would you be? Right back at you.
Something in business, probably, or I've always studied music and I studied business. In high school, I took business law and I played in the jazz band. In college, I majored in music and business. People say, what are you majoring in? I said, music and business administration. And people would always say, that's a strange combination. And I never understood why that was strange. So I love to look at a balance sheet and an income statement, and I like to watch CNBC, and I like to know what's going on with interest rates in the market and all of that stuff. I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe I'd be a real estate typhoon.
Yeah. I mean, why not? I mean, I guess no, I would be a bass player. I guess something in sales. I would do sales. I like talking to people about something that I have passion about. I guess it maybe
You know what I would do? I would construct crossword puzzles.
where did that come from? That's
Yep.
pretty rare.
I got really into crossword puzzles when I shouldn't say this publicly, but when I used to play a lot of Broadway shows, and I'm sitting in the orchestra pit.
Wow.
That's when I got into crossword puzzles. And then when
Wow.
I did the national tour of Into the Woods, right, with Cleo Lane and Stephen Sondheim would come to the rehearsals. It was a big
Yeah.
thing. But we traveled all over, and at intermission, I would swap with the bassoon player, and see what he did the first act, and he'd see what I did, and I'd always get the USA Today, because no matter what city I'm in, I could see yesterday's puzzle, the answer to
Of
yesterday's
course.
puzzle.
Yeah. Every
I,
lobby has a USA Today in it.
I
Wow.
did kind of.
I didn't know that you were a Broadway player.
Oh, I played a ton. I played Fiddler on the Roof with Theodore Bickel, and I played Ain't Misbehaving with the Fifth Dimension, and I played Oliver with Davy Jones from the Monkees, and I did Dream Girls up at the Burt Reynolds Theater, and I did a lot of shows. I love
Dreamgirls
that
must have
kind of
had
work.
some killer bass. You know what? If I could play bass in the pit orchestra for one musical, it would be Jesus Christ Superstar, because
And that was
that is a bass album as far as a musical, if there ever was a bass album. I don't know who that is on bass. You probably do, but he is smoking. Just a
check that out.
killer.
Never
Yeah.
really been a theater person as far as sitting in the audience and watching a show,
Yes,
but
yes, yes. I used to go. I used to go with my family to, but I fought it tooth and nail until I found myself up on the stage, up in my seat dancing at the very end. Seeing the ABBA. I think that was the last show that I saw when ABBA, but it was
it's
amazing.
funny you should mention that, because when my wife and I were in London, I think the first time we were in London, I said, I got to go to Ronnie Scott's world renowned jazz club.
Yeah,
And who's playing there? Rob Coltrane, John Coltrane's son.
yeah,
So that's not really her thing. By the way, I remember looking at the menu, and they're touting these fine imported whiskeys. Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, from Kentucky and Tennessee, these
right.
imported whiskeys.
It is
But
imported.
Yes, but then she got back to me a couple nights later. We saw that show you just mentioned, Mamma Mia, with two
Yeah,
and a half
Mamma
hours
Mia,
of
right.
This is not really my thing, but that's how marriage works. So,
Yeah. Did
it
you
was,
did you like it or no?
yeah, well, I went in there knowing what to expect. Yeah, I'm not going to sit there like this for 2 hours, but it was some stuff I like. Others,
Well, my
not
other
really into.
Fiddler on the Roof happened. That's what made me think. My two favorite musicals are, my family is Eastern European Jews, so I listened to my grandfather singing Sunrise, Sunset when I was a baby for years. I might know every word still to this day of Fiddler on the Roof, like literally every word. that was the soundtrack. Also, that my mother used to play that was playing in my house. I've watched that. I can't watch. I have two daughters, so I can't watch that without getting teary eyed. The whole Tevye role, Zero Mostel. I mean, amazing. And it's funny because it's Jesus Christ Superstar and Fiddler on the Roof are my two favorite musicals. That's funny
Yeah,
how it
that's
works.
interesting.
Funny
Yeah.
how it works. The killer
I
music.
think we better wrap this up and save the rest for a follow-up interview
That would be
because
great in
we've got a lot
person.
of. This was awesome, and I will see you at NAMM. We will make a point of getting together. And
Absolutely. And you're invited to the Base Upfront dinner. And
thank you
you'll
so much.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? Come enjoy yourself, hang with us. I want to thank you very much for having me on. It's an honor to be on For Bass Players Only. I've been a fan for a long time. There isn't a bass player I know that is not familiar with the interviews that you do and the work that you do. And I'm sure I haven't looked through your lesson modules, but I'm sure they're outstanding with your CV. So thank you for everything you're doing for the bass community as well.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all you do. You're no slouch yourself. So, Bass Up Front is the Facebook group. You got to check it out. It's everything David said and more. So, thank you. It's an honor to have you. And we've never met before. This is the first time we've ever spoken. So, I feel like you're a friend, a fast friend.
We are friends already. I'm looking forward to building the relationship, John. Thanks.
Me too. Thank you, David. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. A lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play an instrument. So I created for BassPlayersOnly.com for adults who want to play bass because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. For BassPlayersOnly.com, this is the place to learn bass. Thanks again to my special guest, my new friend, David Sutkin. I will see you all right here next week, same time, same place. In the meantime, let's play bass.